It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
It's a Monday in Central Texas. Coming off a Cowboys loss, it is the Pete Sousa Show. I'm Pete Sousa. Zach Burke, man, he's going to have a baby like any minute. It's coming. Zach, when do you do? Halloween?
Yeah, on the 31st.
Wow. Dude, you don't have to say it like The Undertaker.
Well, I mean, that would be cool, though, honestly.
I think it will be awesome.
But yeah, no, on Halloween.
Oh, man, I can't wait. We are pumped for Zach to have his first baby. It's going to be a rogue baby. Maybe we'll name him Rogue. That is the Pete Sousa Show. Maybe we'll name him Slovacics. No? Slovacic? Or we can name him Ray from Slovacics. Can't forget about our good friends at Crawford Austin Properties and Daniel Stark Injury Lawyers. They're going to be up here tomorrow. I don't think they'll be featured on the show, but we'll be hanging with the folks from Daniel Stark Injury Lawyers. D1, of course, my good buddy Kevin Engelbrecht. And, man, First National Bank of Central Texas and Socorro Family Ford. We are all here today to talk to you about sports. Cam, who will join us in segment 2, is over here waiting in the wings, just watching the Boston Bruins. Cam, Bruins score.
2-1 Florida.
2-1 Florida. It's Columbus Day. I watched the funny Tony Soprano.
His family.
What did he say? Can you put Cam on mic?
This we can expedite this. I've got the video right here.
Can you play it?
Yeah.
All right,
I almost know what he says, but let me
let's get it.
Let's no one speak for Tony.
And I'm not being a jerk. I'm not being a wise guy. What is today called? Is it still called Columbus Day? Or is it Indigenous Peoples
I think it
Day?
is Indigenous Peoples Day. Well, I mean, I don't know what the official
No,
name
it's
is.
okay.
Yeah. All right, you ready?
Yep, go ahead.
Let's just make sure my volume's up. It's not.
He discovered America is what he did. He was a brave Italian explorer. And in this house, Christopher Columbus is a hero. End of story.
It's great.
He's talking to Meadow?
AJ.
Okay.
AJ's loony liberal history teacher has really gotten AJ at a formative age.
Hey, look, and that's another piece of The Sopranos. You want to talk about being out in front of something. That was 20 years ago. And here we are, no longer Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, or People Day, and hats off to everybody celebrating that. If it feels close to you, hey, that's something we have to tip our cap to. Nobody tipping their cap to the Dallas Cowboys this morning. I had a football game in Wyoming. I came home, and I was working with my man Chris Lewis, who's probably one of the best play-by-play guys out there. I was helping Chris out. I only wish that I could have a spotter as good as me. I'll just say that because I think I'm pretty good. But it was a great experience hanging with Chris, doing that with CBS, and then I got home yesterday around 4. Christy was out there. She stuck around. She was out there with her kids and her daughter saw Colorado, visiting schools and stuff. But the big thing is I got home in time. I wanted to see the Cowboys. I did. And I couldn't believe, first of all, I was on the plane and I was watching it, and the Cowboys got off to a fast start. And you're kind of thinking, oh, wow, they've won 2 straight. Here they are marching down the field. This is maybe like the new Cowboys, right? And then bam, same old Cowboys. Now, I don't know if it was injuries. I don't know if it is coaching. I don't know if it's because the Lions were just that much better. But, 47-9 that's historic, and it's a historic loss, a worst loss in the history of Jerry Jones. It's almost now you think, okay, does this remind you of the end of the road Tom Landry or the beginning of Jerry Jones? That's how bad it is for the Cowboys right now. It's crazy. They're 3-3 going into a bye. Matt Mosley's going to join us. He was there at the game. He spoke with Jerry a little bit afterwards. So that's something we're going to chat about today. But one of the big problems for the Cowboys right now is quarterback play. They are missing a lot of guys on defense right now, but you think, okay, the Cowboys are going to have to score a lot of points. Well, they scored 20 in their win against the Giants. They scored 20 against Pittsburgh in that win. And you knew 20 wasn't going to do it against the Lions. Certainly 9 couldn't do it. And Dan Campbell, the way he embarrassed Dallas on the heels of what was a very difficult loss for Detroit on, I guess it was December 30th of last year, that Week 17 loss where they called an illegal substitution late in the game. And Detroit lost because of that. Dan Campbell was getting offensive linemen involved in the running game, the passing game, like carrying the football, catching the football off of laterals. It was a disgusting loss if you're a Cowboys fan. I was actually, second, third quarter, I went out and I was like, oh, I'm going to go for a run. And I was like, I'm just going to listen to I got this Vern Lundquist book I'm listening to. And I was like, I'll leave the Cowboys on for a little because I love Brad Sham. I love Babe Laufenberg. And it's cool to hear guys like that kind of describe a train wreck because they're so awesome. The best part of Brad Sham's call yesterday was with like 9-10 minutes left, he welcomed all the fans that had just left AT&T Stadium to the Cowboys broadcast because he knew that they were on their way home. There were probably only like 15,000 people left in AT&T Stadium, which holds 92,000. So the Cowboys are, 3-3, but right now at this moment in time, and it's a long season, they're in shambles. And again, we're going to talk to Mosley about that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Big 12. You've got Iowa State now ranked 9th, and then BYU is ranked. And it's BYU and Arizona State. Before the season, BYU was picked to finish 13th. Arizona State was picked to finish dead last. I didn't mention Kansas State either. They're ranked 17th. So you got 3 teams in the top 20. And that is bogus. BYU and Iowa State should both be ranked higher. Let me take a look at where BYU is. Cam, you remember where BYU is off the top of your head? Zach? No, that's all right. Somewhere between 11 and 16. Zach's on it. I'm never good at this stuff under pressure. I kind of like. Okay, they're 13th. So BYU's 13th. They play Oklahoma State at home. Oh, BYU. And this is legitimate, and I forget the source, so I'm going to make it illegitimate. But BYU has the second hardest strength of schedule after last week. Okay, in the country on one of those scales. Iowa State is 5th, and these guys are still ranked way deeper than they should be when you think about some of the teams in the SEC that are ranked higher. I mean, you could even say that Alabama, BYU could be ranked higher than Alabama. They almost lost to South Carolina. They did lose to Vanderbilt. So there's a lot going on in the Big 12. Here's the good news. And this is one thing I'm certain of. Okay. We have witnessed our first wave of chaos, right? The Vanderbilt win over Alabama. And even now, I'll make it specific to the Big 12. BYU is undefeated. Again, I mentioned they were supposed to be 13th in the conference. Iowa State undefeated. Iowa State is undefeated for the first time since 1938. In 1938, something an invention that we received were toothbrushes, right? Like we didn't have toothpaste or toothbrushes the last time Iowa State was ranked or was 6-0. I mean, that's gives you some perspective on where that program is and why I think it's hard for them to continue to move quickly up into the top 10, top 5. And it might be hard for a little bit. Now, back to the point I mentioned about the first wave of chaos. There is more chaos to come. I mean, there is a lot more football to be played. Remember now, we are in conference across the board outside of some pay-for-play games. Like this is not as chaotic as it's going to get. It's going to get more chaotic. Like the likelihood, Texas Tech, I want you to think about this as far as the Big 12 is concerned. Right now, let's say Texas Tech or Arizona State, right? They can pull it off and finish the season unbeaten, right? Well, then maybe it's Texas Tech and Iowa State in the Big 12 final. And then you have a school like BYU who, let's say they incur a loss that keeps them out of the final. Well, now do you have 3 teams from the Big 12 in? And when you look at some of the strength of schedules, you could make an argument, but it doesn't, from a national perspective, that certainly is not where some of these AP voters are. And by the way, the AP voters, you could say this, and the Big 12 is now getting some of the feeling, and even me as somebody who is pulling for the Big 12, and I live in Big 12 country now. I guess we all live in every conference's country, but that's fine. We're getting some of the Pac-12 bias now. We have teams that are playing games after a lot of these voters have checked out and turned the light off, right? Turn the computer off, turn the TV off. They're not seeing BYU play football. They're not seeing Arizona State play football. In some cases, when teams like Texas Tech are out west, like they're not seeing them play football. Iowa State, now they were featured primetime on Fox and up against Colorado and Kansas State. By the way, that Kansas State win was huge. And Kansas State now, I think they are gaining such traction that if they were to play BYU again, I think they would be, it just depends on where the game would be, right? I think it's a toss-up at a neutral site, and I think in Manhattan, Kansas, I think Kansas State wins. They probably lose in Provo again. But you're seeing a lot of parity in the conference, but I do believe even that first topic I brought up, the potential of 3 teams getting into the playoff, some of that stuff is going to sort itself out, right? All across the board, all across the country. Things will shake up. We are all prisoners of the moment, which I understand. But it's something to really keep in mind that we have only just begun, right? I think that was a Carpenter song. We have only just begun, and we've only just begun this show. As I get into a little bit of pro football, let's go back there and talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. This hits so close to home for me. Okay. The Eagles yesterday, they played a 1-4 Cleveland Browns team. Now the Browns, Deshaun Watson is your quarterback. And before I get into Nick Sirianni, I'll get into quarterback play and leadership, because this is a whole leadership stew here I'm throwing together. When your quarterback gets in big time trouble, and I mean big time trouble like Deshaun Watson allegedly got into. Now, all that stuff was thrown out of a court of law. The court of public opinion still is a little shaky on Deshaun Watson. If any of that stuff ever were true, it's kind of like deviant behavior, which is, if you're someone like that, it's tough for a group of 53, 53-man roster. You've got a lot of guys that you're leading, specifically on the offensive side of the football. And the thing about why it's hard for someone like Deshaun Watson, or could potentially be hard, is because Deshaun Watson never owned his situation. He disputes it. And if he's being honest, right, then you can throw this whole thing I'm saying out, right? And let's say you take him at his word, right? Well, then maybe the Browns just suck, right? And maybe he just sucks, okay? But I'm going to say, hey, let's say, well, there's enough smoke, there's fire, right? There's something to all those accusations. There's something to the defense attorney, Rusty Hardin, coming up, and you could say, what are you laughing at, Cam?
Rusty Hardin.
Rusty Hardin's the guy's name. And I don't want to say he collected, however many women, but they came forward and they were willing to, and you put yourself out there like that. A lot of these were not like Jane Doe's, right? So the Deshaun Watson stuff is just so messy, right? And you give him all this money. And so now you've got a guy of questionable character basically leading an entire franchise, which gets so suspect. Like $250 million for a guy who can't lead a bunch of drunken sailors through you know what. house, as my father used to say. And so you've got an issue here. Now, let's say that Deshaun Watson admitted, hey, man, I got out of my mind with some of that stuff. And, it's not all true, but some of it is true. And I was a young man with a lot of money and a God complex. I was entitled. It's like, okay, like we're listening to this guy. And he was like, look, I'm going to pay money to certain people, whatever. Like there's restitution there. Okay. It's a little easier to be like, all right. And if Deshaun's like owns it and in the locker room, they know that he's owning it. I'll give you an example. Somebody like this. Okay. And the crimes we're talking about, Deshaun Watson, unspeakable. And I'm going to bring up a guy who gets a lot of people riled up, but I mean, you'd want to talk about a rehabilitation of an image. You look no further than Michael Vick, right? Michael Vick, first of all, he went to prison, so he's proven to be guilty. So right there, you could say, okay, look here, Sousa, your arguments are jacked. Deshaun's never been convicted. Michael Vick has. Okay, I know you're with me here. Like, Michael Vick quickly sought counseling, owned it, went on speaking tours, dealt with the court of public opinion just absolutely coming after him, rightfully so, right? What Michael Vick did was horrible. And he paid the price, right? He paid his debt to society, as you could say. But he wasn't just like that guy saying, oh, I paid my debt to society. No, he was back out there acting like a leader, right? Hanging with guys like Tony Dungy, rehabilitating his image, understanding what he did was wrong. That's a guy who you can get behind. And in some of his portions of his second act, the Eagles were able to get behind Michael Vick and win a lot of football games and win some important football games. People forget that. Michael Vick stepped up when he was given the keys to the Eagles offense and did everything he could do with them on multiple occasions. And I mean, one season, the 2010 season, he had, there were some games that were just amazing. And I bring this up because it was on the back end of him getting trouble in the latter stages of his career, trouble that he himself would tell you he brought on himself. Okay. A guy like Deshaun Watson, where there's so much gray area. It's tough for that guy to lead. I truly believe like it's to a point now where yesterday, the Browns really could have beaten the Eagles. They could have beaten the Eagles. Right. But they just did Browns type stuff towards the end of the game. And they're that kind of team where you're like, they're not going to win. As an Eagles fan, I was like, they're not going to win this game. And they didn't win it. So that to me speaks volumes about leadership, right? And about integrity and about who's going to get behind you. Let's go now to the Eagles, who won the game, but everybody's talking about how their coach has not only, there was a lot of talk last year after the biggest free fall in organization history. The Eagles were losing constantly down the stretch and got embarrassed. And the scoreboard doesn't really indicate the embarrassment, but they got embarrassed at Tampa in the playoffs in the wild card round. I guess it was January 2nd. And Nick Sirianni is the coach of the Eagles. Now, look, man, Nick Sirianni has forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. And by the way, like, let's keep it real. Deshaun Watson is an amazing football player. We're talking about intangibles here and things that separate the good from the great. Okay. For Nick Sirianni, yesterday after they win the football game, he goes back to behind the Eagles bench, and it's clear he's chirping with people. It's been revealed now, multiple sources, even Sirianni himself, that he was chirping with Eagles fans. I don't even want to know how much money these fans pay for those seats behind the bench. So after a win, you're by the way, the team you beat is 1-4, and there's been a ton of smoke about you not getting along with your quarterback. We came into this season thinking, okay, it's going to get sorted out. Who's the guy that was the Cowboys OC that played at Boise State? Kendall Moore. Yeah. Kendall Moore is going to figure it out. So he's the guy that's between these two now, making it work. And, okay, I want to hear, and I was talking to Cam about this. I knew this guy, just watched his career, played at Boston College, was a terrific player, obviously, for the Patriots. Somebody who you would say, and I checked with Cam because he's a huge, super duper weirdo New England fan. I said, is Damian Woody measured? He said he is. So here's Damian Woody, one of the best centers in the game, probably of all time. Here's what he had to say this morning on Get Up about what Nick Sirianni, his behavior following the game yesterday, a win against the 1-4 Browns.
Against a team that looks like it might be as bad as anyone in the NFL. D. Wood, what'd you think of that?
What's this clown behavior, bro? This dude is a clown. Like, seriously, you gonna seriously talk trash to the fans?
Your own fans.
Your own fans. Like, listen, people come out here and pay big money to come out and watch you put a product out on the field. When you don't perform well, they have every right to boo you.
Damn right.
And you gonna get in all in your feelings because fans are booing you because your team stinks? Like, bro, come on. And then you brought up in our meet, like, oh, then you're gonna bring your kids into the post game to kind of soften the blow from what reporters might ask you. This dude is a straight clown, bro. Like, I just don't have any respect for what this man is doing. Y'all barely beat the god-awful Cleveland Browns, and then you want to talk trash to the fans. You talk about the talent. They got all this talent, and they out here looking mediocre.
No, I know. I get it.
Who does that go to? That's the
We know
coach.
who it goes to.
That goes to this clown coach that's out here trying to clown the fans and beating his chest over beating the sorry Cleveland Browns by 4 points at home.
Absolutely.
The one area in which I can speak, the only
I thought we were going to get a little more from Rex there, but we didn't. And then Mike Greenberg in that clip just gave his take, which, by the way, like if I were to ever to be like Mike Greenberg, that'd be like a wonderful career, right? But I like Greenberg more as like when he covered the beat, right? And he's very honest. He talked about that in the statement he made. He said, "Look, all I know about is being a fan." And that's all I know a little bit more. I have some other stuff, but Greeny's been, he was a beat writer for the Bulls and obviously a very knowledgeable guy, but long way of saying, I want to hear from Damian Woody about that, right? A player who, as we mentioned, is somebody with a strong reputation in locker rooms when he was a player. That is very loud when someone of that ilk is talking about Nick Sirianni being a clown. And the reason I touch on that is because there's always been a lot of talk about Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. Maybe they don't get along. There's more to it. This clearly is not the same Eagles team that went to the Super Bowl in 2022. He's lost the locker room. Look, I think we are now seeing Nick Sirianni, a version of a coach that Jalen Hurts has been dealing with this whole time. Like this is, and Jalen Hurts, by all counts, I mean, look, he's an athlete. He's a superstar athlete. He's paid a lot of money. Everybody's going to have their moments with the media, right? You're going to have times where you just are asked certain questions, you respond a certain way. That is going to happen. But in a situation like this, he goes out of his way. Then another part of it that Damian Woody was referencing, after the game, he goes into the press conference and he's got his young son with him. And his son's sitting on his lap. And now Sirianni is defending slow starts, why the Eagles get off to such slow starts. And he wants to talk about, well, the defense starts so fast. How about that? Let's talk about that. And it was just like a very clumsy, awkward interaction with the media. And the fact that he had his son with him was kind of low. And Cam even compared it to, and I'm going to steal this because I took it one further. When like at the end of the movie Heat, when Tom Sizemore he's outside of the bank. Clearly, now we got a shootout in the streets. It is a jailbreak. People are dying, right? I mean, the sounds. I mean, Michael Mann, just one of the most amazing directors of all time. You can literally hear the machine guns echoing off the buildings in downtown LA. And in the movie, Tom Sizemore, as he tries to get away, picks up a young kid. And he's trying to shield himself, right? As every like hardcore, like bottom of the barrel villain does, like he's holding a child, right? So he can't take, or maybe so they won't shoot him, that's what, and I didn't say this, but that's what Damian Woody was just saying, that basically that's what Nick Sirianni was doing yesterday, right? And so the Eagles are, I think they're 4-2, but like it's still a complete mess. And I'll be interested to see how they try and wiggle out of it, because it's pretty clear the Cowboys aren't coming anytime soon. Or maybe they will. A lot of football left, but certainly it doesn't look like it now. We've got Matt Mosley coming up in a little bit. We're going to talk Cowboys again. He was there yesterday. Cam Stewart on the other side of the break. I want to talk to Cam about a little college basketball. Top 25 released today. Mr. Locked On Baylor. We're going to talk to him about the Baylor Bears. Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
The Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network. Big matchup tonight, AFC East, Jets and Buffalo Bills. The Jets at home are a 7-point dog. Wow.
Who's the coach?
The coach is Jeff Ulbrich. He was a bad dude when he played. He was a bad mama jamma. Yeah. He was the kind of guy that would take your head off. Mohawk type dude. You couldn't handle him, Cam.
Oh, really? I couldn't handle an NFL player? In what scenario?
Again, a
Playing
phone
football?
booth.
Yeah,
In a
probably
phone
not.
booth, it would be real
Yeah,
ugly.
I think it might be tough.
So do you feel kind of left out now that the Patriots are so bad that like even a game like this, that they're like
I saw
they're not invited to this party.
yesterday.
They're not invited to this party. They're at home watching, seeing that their friends are posting about it on social media.
And when the Jets lose, they will not be invited to many parties, man.
The Jets are going to win tonight outright. Take it to the bank.
Okay. All right, sure. I don't know. It's kind of whatever at this point. I've gotten used to it from college football, so I just NBA. Ready for that?
What and your NHL too?
Well, yes, I care about that more. But in terms of talking shit ability, it's the NBA.
All right, Cam.
And watch out for those Red Sox.
We are 3 weeks. We got Monday Night Football tonight.
Yeah.
And to piggyback off that point, 3 weeks from now, after Monday Night Football, Jeff Goodman reports that Gonzaga and Baylor, that's when that game will be played.
Monday. It's a Monday night?
That's what
November 4th.
That's what he
it's
reported.
Monday,
Yeah.
Oh, my God. That's going to be so late.
Baylor is ranked 8th in the
But of
country.
course it is. It's Spokane.
Baylor is ranked 8th in the country in the AP poll that was just released. Gonzaga is ranked 6th. They actually got one number one vote overall. This Baylor basketball team.
Who from the Pac-12 voted them to be number one? They're coming into our conference. I'm going to throw them a bone here.
Houston, by the way, is ranked 4th. Let's give you the
Yeah, because
preseason
Baylor's
top.
preseason 4th in the Big 12.
I apologize. Let me give you the top 10.
Please.
Okay. Kansas 1. Alabama 2.
Mhm.
Nate Oates beating his chest. UConn 3. Houston 4. Iowa State 5. Gonzaga 6. Duke 7. Baylor 8. North Carolina 9. Arizona 10. By the way, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Big 12 teams in the top 10.
How about that? Best conference in America, baby.
Right now,
That's what we're
find me a better
chest about.
basketball conference.
Yeah. I think Baylor can.
One team from the ACC. Go ahead.
I think Baylor. SMU.
No.
I think Baylor could actually win this conference. I think if things, obviously there's a ton of question marks with this team because they brought in 3 stud freshmen and a couple of big time transfers who are going to play huge parts, right? So there's some question marks there, but I think if things go quote unquote according to plan, that's a team that could well win this conference, and yet they're picked 4th in the preseason. Like, how many teams can really say that? Like, or conferences, excuse me, can really say that. Like, we have 4 or 5 teams that could really win this thing in the regular season.
Yeah.
There's not many. Duke, I don't know what Duke is, what the hype is with Duke. I think they're a solid team. I don't know if they're a top 10 team coming into the season. The rest of them, I get it. UConn, I don't think is as good as the number 3 team in the country. I think they're still pretty darn good, but I don't think they're quite that good. And Iowa State will, I think, hit a problem, and Houston as well, by the way, will hit the same problem that those teams and the best Big 12 teams seem to hit year after year, is like, do they have enough like dudes towards the end of games? I'm talking dudes that can create their own shot and put games away for you on the offensive end. They're going to be probably the 2 best defensive teams in the country, just like they were last year. I think Houston having to replace Jamal Shed is bigger than people give it credit
Oh,
for.
yes.
Like that, like for a guy who's player of the year, like I think we're just kind of sweeping that under the rug. I don't even know the kid's name, the kid they got from OU. Mosley and I talk about it all the time. It's like, dude, like there was nothing impressive about Oklahoma last year.
Yeah, but they
couldn't even make the tournament. And then all of a sudden this guy goes to Houston and it's like, oh my God, they're
really
not
good,
rebuilding,
dude.
They're reloading. They're so good. Meanwhile, Baylor gets 2 guys who were all ACC players, 2 guys who played in the Final
You're talking
Four.
about Los Uzan.
Yes.
He
sure.
is
that his name?
Yeah. He look.
He's also replacing Jamal Shed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big deal. And I do think Houston's very good, by the way.
Okay.
I'm not trying to say that means they're trash.
No.
I just,
Here's a big part of that too. And this is where you could, first of all, it's all about defense, right?
With those teams, yeah.
Yeah. So with Houston, it's like, he's really got to find a way to become like a system point guard, right?
Mhm.
This is a guy, by the way, at the end of the 2023 season. Yeah, 2023. He was actually like on draft boards. He's a freshman and he was picked to be a 1st-round pick. And he came back to Oklahoma last year. Huh?
Who wouldn't?
Look, I think Porter Moser's an awesome coach and an awesome dude.
Yeah, he's just got to get the winning thing down at OU.
At OU. Dude, he took
go to a Final Four.
Loyola to a Final Four and a Sweet 16 in like 3 years.
Yeah. It's a tough job, OU. It's not hapless, right? But it's not an easy job in the sense that like
the Lloyd Noble Center is rough and people
it's not a good atmosphere. No. There's no buzz around it. I was in college when they went to the Final Four with Buddy Hield. That was an unbelievable team.
Yeah.
And
then they met Jay Wright in Villanova. They went through him like a goddamn buzzsaw.
And like Buddy Hield, in terms of like that campus, Buddy Hield was like nowhere near Baker. Baker was their quarterback back then. Like it was nowhere close. It's one of those kind of no-win jobs, even though like resource-wise, it shouldn't be a wasteland or anything, and it's not. But it's just you're never going to be OU football.
Do you think that
it's like Kentucky football?
Does their brand go down or up being in the SEC now? Just basketball. It's really interesting for the basketball program
Yeah.
at Oklahoma.
I want to say down because people don't care as much in the SEC about basketball. I know Kentucky's there, but on the whole, that people do not care nearly as much. But
Bruce
then I think
Pearl,
up
Nate Oates.
because they're in a better situation. Like it's just not top to bottom the same league the Big 12 is.
Mhm.
Top of it's still pretty good with Alabama, but and Arkansas and Kentucky are top 20 teams too. So I'm gonna go slightly down.
Okay.
Just because I don't think I just think the middle and bottom of that conference is not good and nobody cares. Whereas at least in the Big 12, like the middle of your conference still has like Kansas State in it.
Okay.
And you've seen it. They care.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of what another good team like middle of the conference would be. Kansas State, I think, is a good example. Like
Yeah.
they care. BYU cares. You've seen that.
Oh yeah.
They care.
Yeah.
They were a tournament team last year, but they were in the middle of the conference. They were like 6th in the conference.
Yeah.
So I think that is a better situation than, let's say,
Texas Tech.
Ole Miss had a good year last year.
Yeah.
Tech. Yeah, they care.
Yeah.
It's a football school in terms of popularity, but they care.
Oh yeah.
And you just don't have that in the middle of the SEC. So I'm going to say a little bit
The
down,
Big 12
because that's where they're going to be. They're going to be in the middle of the conference.
The Big 12 every night is awesome.
It becomes cliche with how much we say it, but it's true. Like,
yeah.
And as highly as I've thought of Baylor the last few years as a program, like they struggle on the road, and it's just really tough in this conference. Like there was a point last year where I was really giving it to them on the podcast. I was like, you know what? At some point, you got to sack up and start winning these games, at Tech and at whatever. And someone commented on it. Commenters in general aren't usually the brightest, but this guy was like, you say they got to win at Tech and they got to win by more at West Virginia and they got to win by more at UCF. Kansas lost to all three of those places. And it's like, yeah, that's a good point.
It's a really good point.
Or like, I think UH needed like a buzzer beater to beat Tech in Lubbock. And it's like, yeah, it's a fair point. Or Kansas State was the other one. They never win at Kansas State. And it was like, Kansas lost there too.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, fuck, you're right.
So,
You know what I mean? So it's just tough. And at some point you do need to bring it. Houston lost, I think, 2 games all year in the conference,
Yeah.
So if you want to be in that upper echelon, you do have to do it. But it's not easy playing at these places.
No.
OU notwithstanding.
You mentioned Locked On.
I did.
Locked On Baylor, which of course you can catch Cam Locked On Baylor. You can catch him on
I
Cam
did.
Show.
Sorry, I put out something in today's Locked On episode that I knew the poll was coming out today, and I said if Baylor comes in at any lower than 7th, I need to make a rant. And they came in at 8th.
Ooh.
So I got to do some research for a rant here on why they should be ahead of Duke. Because
Where
I think they
is-
should be, but I gotta.
Where's
look it up.
Baylor football right now in the
In the toilet, man? What? What do you mean?
I mean, where are they in your? You're an alum. You host a show every single day.
Yeah.
And the Locked On brand has become very successful.
Yeah.
There's no denying it. It was funny. I was watching an article. I was talking with Christy about a 48 hours that recently was this doctor who got this girl addicted to drugs, and she had overdose, and the doctor was charged with murder. So I looked up the story on it must have been a Tegna station, because it was like WUSA out of DC, because it was a DC crime. And right after this show, a quick 2-minute news piece I watched, it went right to Locked On Lions. And this guy's like pounding his chest about the Lions beating the Cowboys, and it was good. And I watched it for like 8 minutes. I was like, Jesus, like Locked On, like props, dude.
Locked On really does some good stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, there's still obviously some out there that leave a lot to be desired, but I mean, it's true. But like, I mean, they have a great structure, great
Yeah.
support team, and they know how to pick them.
Yeah.
Which, like, fans who also know what they're talking about and can be objective.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about this with play-by-play guys last week. I think there are just more of those out there than bigwigs at sports media companies realize.
Yeah.
Folks like me who can get crazy about a team and like lose their mind. But I don't think you would say that I'm like not objective most of the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like
you're
you hear
objective.
me do these rants. Like
Yeah.
most of the time it's a bad thing. But like
no, but you're
yeah.
you're an informed Boston sports fan. I mean, you really are. And so, but
so
now,
anyway, you asked about Baylor.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Where's the interest level? Like around the school and
It's
the
low.
program?
It's really low. And last year, like it was really the first momentum of, hey, let's fire this coach, which, as you know, comes with a ton of interest level.
Yeah.
But then when you stick with them and it's also that next year, then you just start to lose interest. And I see it with my numbers from the beginning of the year to now. And it's really low, and there's just not a lot of hope. Like they got to go 4-2 the rest of the way to make a bowl game, which is what everyone agreed before the season would be a success. And there's really just not a lot of the, positive Pete's left out there to give you the route to the bowl game.
Well,
There's
look, Baylor, they flirted. Look, if you're a Baylor fan or you pull for this school, the table,
you might be entitled to compensation.
The table was set for some neat things to happen, and you couldn't pull it off. You blew it at Colorado. You couldn't pull off the comeback against BYU, right? Like there were a couple
the Colorado game
situations.
will haunt it all.
Yeah.
And we talked about it that Monday.
The ball has to bounce your way.
Yep.
Right. And sometimes if it does, you can have these BYU type seasons you're seeing now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't,
and to you pointed out,
you get fired sometimes.
A week or two ago, that's what's happened with Baylor's successful seasons in 21 and 19. Like sometimes the ball bounces your way and you've earned that luck.
Mm-hmm.
Baylor has not gotten that luck, and I don't know that they've earned that luck.
Yeah.
It's a weird sports cliche thing. You've got to earn your fortune. And it's like, what did the Supreme Court say about porn? It's like, I don't know how to describe it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
So I know what when the ball's bouncing their way, you don't know it, but you know it when you see it.
Okay. Now the poll came out today. I got one last thing for you. I want to hold your feet to the fire.
Please.
In early April,
basketball.
What are we talking about? The Baylor college Baylor college basketball team. What's the result? Final Four?
Elite Eight.
Elite Eight.
Which, when you say a team can go to the Elite Eight, that means a team can go to the Final Four.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when the dust settles, Elite Eight is. Look, Baylor needs that right now.
Yeah, postseason success the last few years. Yeah, since winning the national championship, which, look, we'll suck off that nipple the rest of our lives if we need to. But since then, it's been 3 straight second-round exits. No second week.
Zach Kim sucking on nipples, dude.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
But
it's been, but like those teams.
Like, could you say that on a national broadcast?
Who's to say? Who's to say? I could have said something else. I didn't. But either yes, the second round exit has not been good enough with as good a teams as they've had. Now they not only have the talent, but they have guys who have been to the Final Four in their starting lineup. So I'm not saying it's like a complete failure if they don't make the Elite Eight, but that's my expectation for this team. I think they're an Elite Eight team. I think they're that good.
All right, Cam, you're a Final Four guy. All right.
Oh man.
Thank you so much.
Final Four, I'll be there.
You can catch Cam today on ESPN Central Texas with Matt Mosley, who we're coming back with the Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports.
The Pete Sousa Show, presented by Slovacics, powered by the Rogue Media Network, now welcomes Baylor alum. We're going to check in with him about some Baylor college basketball, actually, because that's the football situation, and the AP Top 25 Hoops poll was released today. But he was there for the carnage yesterday at AT&T Stadium. Matt Mosley, welcome back.
Pete, appreciate you having me, and that's a good word for it. It was another just absolute beatdown at home. Cowboys losing 47-9, and man, it is not getting better. You thought they'd kind of, perform better, but wow, what an unbelievable embarrassment that was.
All right, so if Matt Mosley's covering your team 2 out of 3 times, the coaches are in hot water, right? Everybody but the head coach at Lake Highlands is doing all right. Dave Aranda, and now Mike McCarthy, probably before, right, in the offseason as well. Their jobs are on the hot seat. We stick with McCarthy now. What is the pressure like around the head coaching position after yesterday's debacle, Jerry's 82nd birthday, which you talked about with Ed Werder on a magnificent episode of the Doomsday Podcast, which I kept asking Mike Hamilton, when is that going up? I got to hear these guys talk about. That's true, Mose. I was like, I need to hear this from some insiders because it was that bad. But what's the pressure like around in the building around Mike McCarthy this morning?
Well, appreciate your kind words. And I was asking Mike when it was going to go up too, but no, he was very efficient as always and had that thing ready to roll. By the time I drove home from the stadium, that thing was posted and out there to be shared with a cast of thousands. And apparently all the Dallas radio is giving me a hard time because, I have to get in there behind Jerry. And of course, I tend to make some strange facial expressions and that type of thing. And generally I have my sunglasses on, but apparently I'd taken them off. And so I'm catching some heat for whatever faces I was making behind
you're doing
Jerry.
the Mosley looking up at the sky, which is when you come up with most of your brilliant content. And no, I saw the post yesterday on Twitter, and it's nice to see you right in the middle of the scrum.
Yeah, you got to get in there, and it's not a typical thing. Most times the head coaches and players get most of the attention. The Cowboys are the one team. Maybe it's a Dallas thing because for years Cuban was also a big headline maker, and not so much now. But Jerry continues to be, and on his birthday, Jerry said that he said that the Cowboys, he said, we're in the proverbial Esser. And he said Esser, but you know what he was talking about. Yeah. And it really was to see it up close and to see, I think there's some embarrassment. And if you ask how hot is the seat right now, if you think about it, McCarthy being brought back, I don't think he's going to get like any of these excuses. Oh, they were beat up on defense, or oh, this is a lost season, or any of that. Like, they're going to have to make a change. The fan base is upset that this has been embarrassing. If it continues down this path, now people want to know if there would be an in-season change. And this team's 3-3. They're only really one game out of the NFC East race. So I don't see an in-season firing about to happen, although it is concerning that they can't even stay on the field in these home games. They've gotten blown off the field in these 3 home games and 4 if you go back to last year against Green Bay.
Yeah.
So but see, just to give you a little perspective, when they ran Wade Phillips out circa 2010, it was just a total give up. I think I was at that game. Maybe they got beat by Green Bay.
Was it a Monday night or Sunday night game?
It was probably a Sunday night game,
Mm-hmm.
and they got crushed. Then I flew back. I was just trying to think how all that went down. And I had some, they just quit on Wade. I was joking last night on the podcast. I don't know with this team, they're so bad right now, especially at home. I don't know how you would know if they quit or not, right? Because, like, what's the difference in, like, when you're really bad and you're just getting blown off the field? Are you quitting or are you just, like, getting crushed? Pete, you've seen games where you could kind of lean either way, right? Okay, no effort. These guys are dead. I mean, I would say at least the defense has some excuse. Like, they're missing a bunch of players, right? And I think it really exacerbated the situation because – and Dan Campbell's a good guy. I mean, I used to cover him with the Cowboys, and I like Dan. I always got along with him great. But, man, he came in with an agenda from the very start. And he didn't like how they lost that game to the Cowboys. Think about that. That team went to the NFC title game. They had bigger fish to fry than the little old Cowboys. And yet, man, from the first play of that game, he ran out that number 70 Skipper, I think is his name, like Dan Skipper. Maybe that was somebody who used to work at ESPN. No, that was John Skipper. But Dan Skipper runs out there, number 70, and Campbell from the very start of that game was just goofing on the Cowboys. And later in the game, he tried a hook and ladder play that got wiped out because of an illegal man downfield. But, like, man, that was some, like, petty stuff going on. And it's kind of funny. I know not for Cowboys fans, but I'm sorry if you can say, well, man, I can't believe Dan did that. Well, if you are running it up on a team, it's their responsibility to try to either keep the score down or fight back, right? And I think Campbell just wanted to send a message. He hated what happened last year. He was mad at the officiating. He was mad at the NFL. I think they thought the Cowboys got preferential treatment. And so his purpose was to come in there and embarrass the Cowboys. And I would say he accomplished that in every conceivable way.
When you go in the locker room after the game, right? What was the vibe like in there? Are guys just like in the training room? Like, are guys available? Or like, I would imagine it's tough for somebody covering the team to go in there and find a quote machine.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, we've had plenty of opportunities after these. I mean, I know they had the fake comeback against the Ravens, or was that the one they actually tried to get back in the game at the end? Micah has been the best one to talk to after those games. And of course he wasn't available because he wasn't playing. I mean, they all kind of did their thing. And Damone Clark, who I thought was one of the only guys who actually played decent at times, who had to start at middle linebacker with Kendricks out. I think they just kind of, it's almost like they're so shell shocked. They don't know what to say. It's like, we got to look in the mirror. We got to, we can't panic. We haven't hit the panic button. I mean, Dak was running out some kind of weird, we got something about practice again. Yeah. Like we got to be better in practice. I mean, it's just, man, nobody wants to hear any of that. So I think it's just, I would say the general vibe was just one of kind of embarrassment. And the next step, if this continues to happen, is that players are human, right? They'll either turn on, I mean, like receivers sometimes turn on their own quarterbacks. I do not think CD and Dak are in a very healthy place right now. I'm not saying they're like, they're not friends anymore. I don't care about that. I'm just saying, like, I think there's a general sort of disrespect between the two right now that's kind of festering and is just kind of wafting around. Okay. And then I think the rest of them, see, when players get killed like this, and it happens 2 or 3 times, they at some point start kind of grasping for, like, whose fault is this? Like, you saw one player in the NFL, I think it was Jacksonville yesterday, say something kind of like, yep, we had some quit in us in the second quarter. Yeah. You saw some quitters, right? That guy starts kind of calling out his teammates. Like, I think it's on the verge of that. Like, Mike has already had some stuff like that this season. And I think the rest of them, I don't think they're ready to quit on McCarthy, but it could be trending in that direction.
Are they this bad, or is it the injuries? Or I'll give you a third option. Or is it the opponents? Because these are, they have gotten taken to the woodshed, but these are good opponents. I mean, they're solid teams that are beating them down like this.
Except really the Saints haven't won since that game. So I think the Lions are good. The Ravens obviously kind of used the Cowboys to get going. I mean, they had gotten off to a rough start. I don't think the Lions secondary people were sitting around talking about how great it was or anything. And the Cowboys couldn't do anything. Cowboys did not get in the end zone. I mean, I think that the defense, they're a mess. But I don't think it's completely fair to put it all just on injuries, because part of that stuff was happening with the Saints and even the Ravens. I mean, some of that was happening with the big dogs on the field. Those injuries happened in that game. I can't remember if it was the Giants, and then it might have been the Giants. I mean, I'm just saying, when they had their full complement of players, they were still getting blown off the field. So I don't think we can totally put it on the injuries, but I do think that, I mean, Jerry would never admit it, but man, there's some embarrassment when your quarterback continues to, he's the highest paid player in the game. And people get tired of hearing that. They're like, well, they didn't have any time. He couldn't block them. Well, okay. I mean, on that interception he threw in the red zone, which is the third red zone, turnover he's had in the past 2 weeks.
And he almost had 4, right? The other one was waved off, was called back.
Correct. And that was on his own, in his own territory, I think, or maybe he was down there. I'm just trying to, but I mean, like to just kind of throw that ball up there with almost kind of a lack of conviction. And that player, Brian Branch, almost seemed like he baited him into it. He came off his man and made a relatively easy interception. And I just think right now, I think the team is losing faith in McCarthy, and this quarterback is not inspiring much faith.
All right, last question. If this keeps up, who's the next coach of the Cowboys?
We're going to do this every week, aren't we? Because if this happens, it's going to head that direction. I would say the leader in the clubhouse right now is Bill Belichick. And I think Bill wants back in. And the fact that they have a quarterback here, as poorly as he's playing right now, I don't think Bill wants to start over with a rookie. Although, my gosh, anybody would want to start with Jaden Daniels right now with the Commanders, even in a losing cause. He still played well yesterday. So, but I think Belichick is the leader. And then I'll give you a tease. There's somebody I have in mind for Baylor that will fascinate you, that nobody else is talking about right now. And it is someone with Baylor ties. And I'll leave it at that.
Matt Mosley, you can catch him today on ESPN Central Texas. The podcast with Ed Werder, Doomsday, is up right now at the Rogue Media Network. Matt, man, I love the insight, and I really cherish it. So thanks for the time, bro.
I appreciate it, and I'm around if you ever need me for one of your many shows. All right, whatever you need, especially you saw in those pictures behind Jerry. I mean, I am TV ready. Okay,
you look good, dude. When I saw you in person, you look good. Yeah.
All right, I'll holler at you.
All right, Matt. Take care, buddy.
All right. See ya.
The Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network. Interesting talk right there when you think about the Cowboys and their future and Baylor and its future. Matt mentioned that last night on the Doomsday podcast with Ed Werder, or maybe Ed brought it up, that if Matt Mosley's covering your team right now, unless you're the head coach at Lake Highlands, your job is, I don't know, there's a dark cloud over it. But that'll wrap it up for the show today, presented by Slovaceks, Daniel Stark Injury Lawyers, Socorro Family Ford, D1, of course, First National Bank of Central Texas, and Crawford Austin Properties. We'll be back tomorrow. Zach Burke, take us out of here.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
We are Rogue Media Sports.